Hello, it is Hannah from Rundle's Urban Farm, and I'm going to take you on a little tour of our garden today, show you what we have growing and talk about some of the different varieties and different methods we're using to grow tomatoes and squash and other plants this year. This is the first garden tour of the season, and most of the plants have only been in about a week. The tomatoes have been in a little longer than that, and the peppers I just barely planted a couple days ago. So to start off, we'll take a look at the tomatoes that I'm growing this year. I've got two different trellis methods here. One with these really tall T-posts is a string tying method where I'll run a cord down from the top of the T-post there and bring it down to each individual tomato. And then I'll wrap the tomato around the string as they grow and prune them pretty heavily so that there's just one main stem. And then over here I have a cattle panel trellis, and the tomatoes are down here, and once they reach the cattle panel right here, I will start tying them to the trellis, and then they'll grow up to the top of that and possibly beyond. So I'll walk you through the tomato varieties that I'm growing here. This first one is a true black brandywine, and this is a potato leaf variety, so you can see the leaves are bigger and they're not super serrated, they're a little more smooth along the edge. So I'm growing two of those. And then the next variety is a Pantano Romanesco. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but this one is a regular leaf tomato. This is a Italian heirloom variety, and it produces kind of an all-purpose slicer tomato, but it's an Italian variety, so it's also recommended for paste and canning and such. The next variety here is a Cherokee Purple. Now, I grew this variety last year, and all season was kind of like, nah, it didn't impress me. But then, once we started really getting ripe tomatoes off of it, there weren't a ton, but the ones we did get were just glorious tasting. We had burgers one time and we had run out of ketchup, and we put those on them. You did not even need ketchup. The tomatoes were so juicy and flavorful. So really excited to see how this one does, and maybe it'll produce more this year. Then over here we have a Blue Beauty, and the Cherokee Purples turn purple on the shoulders if they get enough exposure to sun. The Blue Beauty are similar. They will turn almost black though. So excited to see how those turn out this year. And then over here we have a Hungarian heart tomato. Now this is a paste tomato, and they're a little more wispy looking as they're growing, but this is going to produce heart-shaped large paste tomatoes that can weigh up to like a pound. This is another Hungarian heart in here. This is a water cloche, and it's just a season extender that I'm experimenting with. This is a wild boar indigo apple tomato, and this is going to produce more mid-sized slicer tomatoes, maybe saladette, slightly bigger than that though, and they will be kind of a really vibrant color with blue shoulders. So they're kind of a unique variety. They're bred by Brad Gates of Wild Boar Farms. And then here we have Black Crim, and these are another purple blue variety. When they get enough sun, they'll turn black on the shoulders, and that's because of the anthocyanins in the fruit. These are said to have really good flavor. And then over here we have an Amish paste. Now I'm growing these because I want to make a lot of tomato sauce, but I have thus far not been impressed with the way paste tomato plants look in general. They're kind of wimpy looking. This is a San Marzano, and it looked pretty much like the almost paste when I planted it, but then it totally perked up. So hopefully the other paste tomatoes will do this as well. And then over here, these are some of my standout starts here. This is a Krinkovic Yugoslavian. I looked it up. I think that's how you say it, Krinkovic. It's kind of fun to say. And they are some of the healthiest looking starts that I have so far. They're just another big slicer tomato. Then over here we have a Smiley, and I mean, who wouldn't love a tomato that's called Smiley? The plants have been super healthy looking ever since we started them, and we almost planted even more of them because the starts just look so great. Here we have a German pink, and these ones also stood out just really well as starts. This is another potato leaf variety, so you can see there's a lot less serration on the leaves. These produce a big pink slicing tomato, but it's also kind of an all-purpose tomato, really meaty. Now this is called a church tomato, and the Smiley, the German pink, and the church are part of a seed trial. So basically, Seed Savers Exchange has sent me the seeds, and I am analyzing them over the course of the season for vigorousness of growth and plant production and yield and disease resistance and some other different things. And they are working on introducing some of these varieties to their catalog that they haven't had available to the public before. So I'm excited to see these. There's not a lot of information on the web about these particular varieties. Then here we have an airy leaf, and this is a paste tomato, and it is also part of a seed trial that I'm doing through Seed Savers Exchange. These ones looked really wimpy again when I put them in the ground, but they're turning out all right. This one is Ronaldo, and it's kind of small. I'm not sure if you can see it very well. Here's another Ronaldo, and those are another tomato in the trial. And I was able to find probably the least information about this variety available online. And then the Salvaterra's Select is also part of the trial, but this one is I can't remember what it's called. Basically the control variety, that's what it's called. So this one is a known good producer for paste tomatoes, and obviously it looks really healthy. So that is our tomato varieties that I have in the garden here. And then over here in the greenhouse, these will eventually move out of the greenhouse, but I've got a couple of cherry tomatoes. There is a kaleidoscopic jewel and a purple bumblebee, and I put these all in this bucket. Well, it's like, I don't know, maybe a 10-gallon green nursery container, and 3 is probably a little much, but we'll see how they do. Then I planted alyssum around the base of them that can act as a ground cover, so hopefully it'll look pretty in addition to keeping it in the moisture. Alright, and here we have my squash trellis, which is made from a 16-foot cattle panel, and I'm going to train up the squash plants here to run up and over the trellis. So the first 6 squash here, I think I can get them all in that shot. These are another Seed Savers Exchange trial set of varieties. There's an Oregon, which was bred in Oregon specifically for cooler climates. There's a Banquet, and there's a green gold winter squash. And then over here I have spaghetti squash and blue Hubbard squash. Now Hubbards are a very large, comparably sized to a pumpkin, and they are highly productive, but they taste a lot better than pumpkins if you want to eat them. And they're supposed to store very well. Here we have a small sugar pumpkin. We're just growing 1 or 2 pumpkins this year because we grew a ton last year, and we just found that we didn't really like the flavor as much for eating. So we grew mostly other types of winter squash. This one is a Waltham butternut, which is kind of your classic butternut variety, and I'm growing 4 of those right now. They were highly productive last year, and we got a ton of squash off of them. And then here at the back, I have a kabocha squash and an ebony acorn squash. And obviously acorns are a classic winter squash. And then kabocha are kind of a cross between a buttercup squash and an acorn maybe. They are flatter shaped than an acorn, and they don't have the cup that a buttercup has. They're just have amazing nutty flavor, really good texture, more on the dry side, but not at all stringy, and just very, very good. Alright, so then here I have peppers. So 3 of these here that you see are called King of the North, and they are a bell pepper, and they're specifically bred to ripen more quickly in northern climates. The one you see at the back is called a violet sparkle pepper, and it's just another sweet pepper that might be purple. Then over here, this guy is a purple jalapeno, and I think the blueness on the leaves is because of the anthocyanins. I'm not quite sure. Maybe he's just unhappy. Hopefully he'll snap out of it. And then we have some orange spice jalapenos, which will be orange when fully ripe. And a purple beauty bell pepper, which aren't quite taking off. And then, let's see, over here we have, I believe these are Etudia peppers. They are a Polish bell pepper, which I picked specifically because Poland is a cooler climate, and with our cooler growing climate here, I thought they would maybe do a little better than, say, a California bell pepper. The one at the back is a lipstick sweet pepper. It's just bright red. It's smaller than a bell pepper. And then over here we have Ruia bell pepper, which is another Polish variety, and candy cane sweet pepper, which is smaller than a bell pepper, and really colorful. And then here we have some eggplant, and one of these is just your traditional black eggplant, basically run-of-the-mill, but produces really great texture black eggplant. And then the other 2 are Rosita eggplant, which produce kind of a neon purple large eggplant. And then down here, I can't remember what these are. Oh, banana peppers and poblano peppers. Now, poblano peppers, I've only really had them as ancho chilies. Basically, when you dry them, they kind of turn red, and you could use them as kind of a chili powder or taco seasoning if you grind them up. And I really like the flavor. They have kind of a smoky flavor to them. But some people will use poblano peppers for like stuffed peppers or just eating like a bell pepper. They, unbeknownst to me, do have a bit of a kick. I tried them the other day as stuffed peppers, and they were a little spicier than I would prefer. But definitely milder than, say, a jalapeno. And then we have banana peppers, and these are just a sweet yellow pepper, really long and good for snacking on although I don't think I've ever in my life snacked on peppers. So we'll see how those turn out. And then walk down here to the end of the garden. We have this is a Delicata Squash, and I just couldn't resist trying it. I've never had that variety. We've got garlic here, which is enormous. And then I've got onions, and the onions I planted from seed this year. I've never grown onions from seed. I always grew them from sets, which the sets, when you get them, are probably about as big as these bulbs here, but they don't have the top. Now, the advantage to growing onions from seed rather than from sets is that onions are a biennial plant. That means they flower every other year. So when you're growing a set, you're getting a onion plant that has already been dormant for one season. So that means that when you grow it, it will flower that season. Now, typically when you're growing anything that produces food you're going to eat, unless the flower is what produces the fruit, you don't really want it to flower, because then it's putting its energy into producing the flower and not the root. So it's supposedly, and I haven't tried this yet, but supposedly when you grow onions from seed, the bulb gets a lot bigger. So far I'm pretty pleased with how these are turning out. They're looking pretty big, and honestly they're catching up to the garlic, which was started in September and is just huge. And over here, at the very end of the garden, I am trying to grow spinach and Swiss chard. Now, I've had a hard time getting them to germinate at all. And then they finally germinated, and so I have some spinach, and it's doing pretty well. But the other day I noticed that some of the leaves were getting these strange spots on them, and it looked like they had weird air bubbles in the leaves. So it turns out there was this fly that was laying eggs on the back of the leaves, and I can't remember what it was called. But anyway, the larvae hatch and they eat the inside of the leaves, and then you end up with these air pockets and just kind of gross marks on your spinach. So I pulled off all of the bad leaves. You can look on the back of them, and sometimes you see a little white line of eggs. It's usually like 5 or 6. So I pulled off all of those leaves, and I'm hoping that will solve the problem and I won't have any more of those eating my spinach from the inside. And then over here we have cosmos and some sunflowers, and most of these are volunteers from last year. I did plant a couple new varieties of cosmos, but the cosmos definitely reseed heavily. You can see all of these here, and they'll just be super attractive to our bees and just really pretty in the garden. And then here we have the compost pile next to mostly our flower garden, but we also have some crops in here. We've got blueberry bushes, which are new for us this year, and we've got at the back peas, and these are going to be purple potted peas, so that should be really fun to try. And then just a mixture of flowers, nasturtiums, which we really enjoyed last year, and more blueberries, some garlic, which I'm kind of trying to see if it'll do well in the shade. I don't know, it's more of a full sun crop. A volunteer sunflower and more flowers. Oh, and these are our these are our plum trees. We didn't know when they bought the house that these were all plums, and we almost ripped them out last year. We pruned them back really heavily, and then we got 80 pounds of plums off of them at the end of the summer. So we pruned them really heavily again this year, and hopefully we'll get a lot of plums off of those. And then here is our patio space, where this is one of my favorite things to grow. I have barrels full of flowers and mint just for the beauty of it. So I really like blue flowers, so I've got lobelia in there, and alyssum. This stuff the bees really enjoy. We liked it last year because the bees enjoyed it so much, and then this year we got our own bees. So hopefully that does really well. It should get really big and just amazing. So that is exciting. We had a grape here. Now we have a grape on the other one, and you can see that one came back. This, I'm not so sure if it's gonna come back. Right now it looks like a stick. And we bought another bare root grape, and it just looks like we bought a stick. So I don't know, hopefully it comes back. And then we've got alyssum and lemongrass in these with some nasturtium seeds mixed in. And over here we've got our second barrel and some other pots with similar flowers in them. And then this is my high tunnel greenhouse hybrid thing. I've got a lot of plant starts in here that are extra, some basil, which I'll plant next week. I'm growing some greens in there. I started them really early, and they have already produced several salads worth of greens. And then over here, another crop of greens, which just got started, an acorn squash, and some beans. Most of the bean varieties are for a seed savers trial as well.